there's an issue that would have came up on Friday, and we would have been notified as a TCI public on Saturday. I don't know how much persons are aware, but they might be by this point. It's Tuesday morning now. I'm talking about the Neptune Villas and the Neptune Villas episode that would have happened over the weekend on Friday evening, involving Mr. Devontae Smith, as well as Mrs. Raisha Higgs and members of their party at the Neptune Villas. Now, this has been developing and it's something that's happened on Facebook, and I've been watching it closely. Mine now. It took a lot of me not to respond on Facebook, but I said, you know what, Jamel? Persons expect you to have an opinion on these types of things. So, rather than forming or helping to shape others' opinions on how they should react, why not allow others to have their say and give their opinions on the content. So for persons who aren't aware of what took place, I'll just give a quick recap and then I'll give my thoughts on it before we move on. So first off, there was a arrangement made at the Neptune Villas. Others might know it as the La Breezes complex as well, where the restaurant La Breezes at in Chalkson. There was a villa rental that took place on Friday evening for a surprise gathering for Devontae Smith before he goes off to university within the next few weeks or so. So everybody was gathering there. The surprise took place, and then the person who was later identified as the hotel owner basically came to the persons on the property at the villa and insisted that they leave the property, or she will call the police on them, which she eventually did. But like the good stewards and students and young TCI patriots they insisted on her producing the contract, which said they can't have multiple people in the villa. And mind you, to boot, they weren't making any noise. They weren't destroying the property. The lady didn't even come into the property, but she came there very belligerent by both accounts, by Mr. Smith and Mrs. Higgs. She was very belligerent. So eventually the police came, and she refused to produce the contract with the information indicating that they would have to leave if a certain number of guests was there. And the police came. She produced the contract for them. The police advised her they can't ask the guests to leave, given that the contract doesn't specifically state what she was complaining about in that particular situation. Then a few of the persons who were there overheard the lady, the owner, on the telephone, which she could have been speaking to her counterpart, and she said the words to the effect that this is why they don't do business with locals. Now, before I get into my opinion, right, there was a flurry of responses, anger, suggestions on what should be done, all kind of things, as well as calls for our sitting politicians and our budding politicians to make their voices known. So, me being the analytical person I am, I gave it a while, and you watch the page and you see what's going on, and you see who's saying what and all that stuff. So before I came on this morning, I said, okay, it's been about 3 days. Everybody who's somebody would have had an opportunity to know, given that it was done in a public forum, mind you, Speak Your Mind, TCI, and word travels fairly quickly on what took place. So these persons would have been, one of the things that happened was Mr. Smith's brother, Drex would have publicly called out to several politicians to basically to hear their views, and I'll call their names, and then I'll call the persons who I've actually noticed either posted or shared or made some type of comment on either Raisha's or Devontae's original post. Now, mind you, I have a Facebook page of my own and whatnot, so it's easy enough to gather information of anybody who would have stated that their disdain for the incident, and I didn't catch them because, again, it's between 8 o'clock this morning and now. If you'd have updated something, you could always call in to correct me if you don't hear your name in terms of the stain or whatnot took place. So on Drax's page, he tagged these following individuals. He tagged Honorable Charlene Cartwright, Honorable Josephine Connolly, Sabrina Elizabeth Green, Honorable Akira Mizik, Azra Taylor, Karen Adams Malcolm, Sheba Wilson, Doug Parnell, Honorable Vaden Delroy Williams, Honorable Sean Oswald, and Sean Malcolm, asking for them to respond. Now, this would have been at the 7 o'clock hour, and some persons responded before then, and some who have political affiliations would have done so after that point. And I'll tell you why I'm calling these names and the persons who would have responded so far. So the national chairman of the campaign chairman of the PDM would have made a statement. Dwayne Taylor, Damien Wilson, an independent candidate. Honorable Connolly would have made mention. Honorable Sean Oswald would indicated publicly that he would investigate the situation, get back to speak to all the parties involved. And we're going to be waiting on that particular report, because if you put something out in the public domain saying you're going to do something, the public would like to know what that report came back from, the information you would have gathered from all parties involved, as well as the Honorable Oswald Skippins made a response, Kelsada Johnson, candidate for Leawood, as well as Ralph Higgs and Sabrina Elizabeth Green. Now, I say all of that to say this. We have at least 45 confirmed candidates so far. And the list I would have read who responded might have been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8. You're talking about maybe 20% of the people who say they want to lead us responding so far, of the confirmed candidates, right? Now, there was a request specifically by the brother of the person involved in the incident, Mr. Draxwell Smith, saying, we want to hear your views. Now, it's important given the issue, because this is a clear case of racism, discrimination, whatever you want to call it, happening to young Turks and Caicos Islanders. And here's the thing about it. There's a couple of issues besides the clear ones that I have with this situation, besides the racism and discrimination. One, like my good friend Fly Chick would have said, if this was a bunch of white kids, this would never be an incident. It was not going to happen. That treatment would not happen. That's a fact. Two, we look to our leaders in these types of instances, particularly given this is an election year, because we need to know how you stand. And why I call those names and say who said what publicly, because this was an issue that was aired publicly. It wasn't done privately. It was done publicly. So for me, the person should respond in kind, because if Raisha and Devante wanted this handled in a private way, they would have done so. So calls to the parents and the kids themselves isn't enough in my view, particularly when everybody under the planet got a Facebook page, so, and it in a public forum, so it doesn't take you being their friend to respond to their accounting of it and give your opinion on what took place, good, bad, or indifferent. Now, the persons that responded, some responded with just, okay, this is TCI, this always happens. Some gave some solutions, some just recognized the discuss. Now, for me, the best part about this is that the kids themselves, and I call them kids, the young adults themselves, sought to represent themselves, which is indicative of this generation. We want your support. We don't want you to be our mouthpiece. We want you to help us do what we want to do, because it wasn't Devante's mom or dad who went on Speak Your Mind to say what happened to their child, like in years past. It wasn't Raisha's mom or dad who went on Speak Your Mind, TCI, to say what happened to their child over the weekend. And some of those persons were actually at the event, so they would have witnessed what took place too. It was the actual young persons within that group And guess what? In a lot of instances, the best solutions that I saw was from young people. Young people right away knew what to do. They suggested boycotting. They suggested put this incident on TripAdvisor. Why? Because economic power drives things. Because that messes with the bottom line. Talking to people and saying how X, Y, Z, but still patronizing their businesses, that doesn't change anything. Still going to their businesses wouldn't change anything. Picketing them, doing all these things that may, without thing, but in terms of boycotts and stuff, that's you're talking about real economic change right there, in terms of persons being affected or lasting thing. So for me, I was happy the way that the young adults handled themselves. So to sum now, what I think should happen: one, they need a refund right away, hands down, because they ended up leaving when the police come. They ended up leaving not too long after because they didn't want an incident to drag on. And then there were some instances where they were trying to return the key the next day, where there was basically avoidance and stuff. So they deserve a refund. They didn't get to enjoy the full length of time for which they would have paid. So give them the full refund, because guess what? In many other businesses, if you get a meal and that meal is garbage, restaurants give you a full refund on your food. Or if there was poor service at a restaurant, they give you your meal or whatever for free. You know what I mean? So that's the first thing. I support the boycott. You can't be going to businesses that want to treat people like this in your country the way those guys were treated. And for me now, right, a lot of persons are highly upset because of who was involved, right? Because you're talking about two national scholars being treated this way. I'm upset because it's a Turks and Caicos Islander, period, right? Because it could have been any other person, and our response might not have been as outrageous as it should, as it has been. And for me, it needs to be that way for all of these types of incidences that young Turks Islanders are discriminated against. Young Turks Islanders and old Turks Islanders, period. Right? So the boycott, don't support these types of businesses. And another thing that I would say before I bring on the other hosts, if they want to add on to this before we get to what we're really here about, is that I don't want to hear a person say, oh, well, how can you expect others to treat us better when we don't treat ourselves good as well? That is not enough. That's not an excuse. Don't give anybody an excuse to treat you poorly. Because I'll give you a perfect example. Think about any family unit in the Turks and Caicos Islands. Families bicker, families fight, families cuss each other. Stink to the dogs. But as soon as an outsider come touch ma, pa, sister, brother, those family members make a circle around that person and protect them. Sometimes even to the detriment, but we protect them. Turks and Caicos is a small family just like that. Don't care what happened. That's our issues that we got to walk through about how we treat each other. But that doesn't give anybody the right to come into the country and behave in the manner which took place over the weekend. So I don't want to hear that part. So again, support your local businesses, and those local businesses support other local businesses. It ain't just for you to do your own thing and become rich and then forget about the people that help you got there. Those young adults need their refund and boycott. And I believe additionally we need a public apology from the owners and the person who was involved in the incident, because it's nonsense. So those are the four things I believe that's more tangible given this particular situation. Now, I'll bring on the other person, and then we could get to the meat of the matter if they want to add anything to that, because I know they've been following this thing. But that's my couple cents on where I see it develop so far.
Good morning, Turks and Caicos Islands. And I was sad when I read the story, but I was even more proud that these young people didn't just take that incident and just went home and kept it under wraps. Instead, they did what wilderness children do. We grabbed the bull by the horn. We want results. We want action. And we're not afraid to clearly explain to people this is what happened and this is what we need to see happen. Now, what I found interesting, right, is that this is not the first case that I've heard about with Turks and Caicos Islanders who were refused service by a foreign-owned or operated company. And what is said to me is that this may not be the last. Mm-hmm. But the question you raise is serious. What will the representatives do about it? Because at the end of the day, there are a number of things that can be done. Mm-hmm. Boycott is one, but I want to know too, do we have provisions in our laws that protect our citizens against discrimination? Because I know in the Constitution, the first few articles of our Constitution speaks to the rights of individuals to have protection from discrimination. So this sounds like a civil suit. This sounds like a case for Ms. Doreen Quelch from the Integrity from the Human Rights Commission. Mm-hmm. I don't know if they take her, but they need to go see her. Her office is still located in IGA.
Right by IGA.
IGA. No, this is serious because other people carry their cases of discrimination to her, and whether they get anywhere or not, this is a clear case of discrimination. Now, I can tell you what I'd like to see happen. I don't know if it's possible, but
I only got time for 2 hours, you know.
But one, if the law does not permit, I would like to see the law permit that in cases like these, once the matter is investigated, and to me, based on it is clear what happened, and it's not the first time I think that these stories take place. One, a public apology. Two, I think that business should be suspended from the registry for a period of time. This is serious. You cannot discriminate against individuals in their country. Nowhere. This is just a clear case of discrimination. And to me, my mother told me that when you do wrong, you must be punished. And at the end of the day, I don't want this to be a case where we get a couple of public statements from members of parliament or potential candidates, and that's it. Because that's where it's heading right now. You remember the other day when Miss Sabrina Green shared her story?
I remember.
You remember how she was calling for some, we are the fighters?
Yep.
And not one fighter come forth. Mm-hmm. No, this is serious. And we're talking about empowering Turks and Caicos Islanders, and you said election season, you're correct. You would think that this season would heighten everybody's patriotism and, hey, you know, we got to defend these young
only
kids.
20% responded. Mine, I ain't even say, but 20% was all quality, you know. I just talking about put fingers to typewriter.
And what is
and publicly responded. I mean, ain't counting the calls behind the scenes and stuff. That don't count.
No, and what is investigation? We you know, because I hear that all the time. Oh, we're gonna investigate this matter. Okay. Like you said, could you publish your investigation results, please? Because these are two young patriots and young, potentially great Turks and Caicos Islanders. They've already achieved so much. What are you saying to them if this incident goes unaddressed and there's no recourse? That is sad to me. That's my 5 cents.
That's the 5 cents. The last thing I say on this, and then we can get to the first. Well, I dealing with the first 2 decades, and then you can deal with the next 2 decades, and then we can open the phone lines for persons to talk. You know, if they have questions or comment on the last 40 years of development in TCI. One of the things that stuck out to me, and I didn't get a chance to say it before, was that you must know your rights. These children knew their rights. Mine now, it happens that Devante happens to be a budding lawyer, but
regardless,
that wasn't going to happen because Raisha was there and other people was there who knew their rights.
Different generation.
You have to know your rights and not only know them, be willing to exercise them. Because when they were on the Breakfast Club yesterday, I called in and congratulated them. I said, guess what? If that was me, I would have stayed there, regardless. Mm-hmm. Because sometimes you got to make people understand this is my right. This is my right. And that was their rights. They didn't violate. They didn't disturb the peace. They didn't do anything wrong under the law of this country. So they didn't have to leave. Now, they did what people would say, all right, the gentlemanly thing or whatever thing, the responsible thing, nonsense. They should have stayed there. They could have continued the gathering and did whatever they want to do. But it was their choice to leave. But they could have stayed, and they should have stayed. Because in the end of the day, the incident will likely put plenty pressure on that company or that complex. Right? But they ended up getting what they wanted, which was that party to leave. But anyway, let's leave that up.